The next speaker is Mr. Achyuta Ghosh, Research Head, NASSCOM. Mr. Achyuta has more than 15 years of professional experience in research and consulting. In his current role, he heads the research function at NASSCOM for the Indian IT-BPM landscape, which includes IT services, BPM, software products, ER&D, internet and e-commerce. He also assists Fortune 500 companies and investors with strategic insights on future directions of the technology industry and impact on the business strategy. He is an active technology industry analyst and influences key stakeholders of the Indian IT-BPO industry. Mr. Achyuta, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Raman, for inviting me and suggesting this interesting topic, industry in transition. I think we all agree that every industry today is in transition, and this is mostly due to the impact of technology. At the same time, like the mythological snake eating its own tail, I think the technology industry itself is facing the maximum disruption. At the same time, innovation and its sister word, transformation, these are probably the most used or misused word of this century. I guess every collateral that you may read, every research report that you may read, or every consultant or sales talk that you may have, it might have these two words. But does that mean it's just a buzzword? No. I think an industry in transition actually opens up a lot more avenues for innovation. So what we'll do here, what I plan to do here is that I have three sections, three things that I want to cover. First is, where does the Indian IT BPO industry stand today? The second part is, what are the tech disruptions that are making this an industry in transition? And the third part clearly is, how is innovation as a concept being redefined because of this transitioning industry? A brief about what NASSCOM does. We are India's largest IT BPO trade body. We have about 2,500 companies as members. And these are the 9 things that we do, which is basically policy advocacy, industry development, creating enabling environments, developing global markets, focusing on e-governance within India. We have our own entrepreneurship program called 10,000 Startups. We do reskilling, skill development. We also do a lot of cybersecurity initiatives, and we have a social development focus also. This is in collaboration with all our sister organizations, which are mentioned on the right. And we are only 150 people, but for 150 people, I believe that we are more than some of our parts. We make a lot of noise. We make a lot of impact. So the first section talks about where we are today. Where is the Indian IT industry today? We currently generate about $143 billion of revenues, the Indian IT BPO industry. Just compare that 20 years back, when this industry only generated about $100 million of revenues. So this has been a meteoric growth. As the industry has become bigger and bigger, the growth has slowed down, but still, I don't think there is any other industry in India which is growing at these levels. The second is we contribute significantly to the Indian economy. Almost 9.3% of India's economy is contributed to by the Indian IT industry. We are the largest private sector employer in the country. We employ about 3.7 million people directly. If you take the indirect employment into account, that is an additional 10 million people. So the IT industry is kind of impacting almost 14 million people through direct and indirect jobs. We are the leader in the global sourcing space, the global sourcing of IT and BPO services. We have a 56% market share. Just for perspective, the second biggest country in this space is China, which has half our market share. And over a period of time, over the last few years, India has clearly emerged as an innovation hub. One key indicator for this is the growth of technology startups in the industry. Today, there are more than 4,000 startups in the Indian IT industry which are creating innovative products. I have a more detailed slide on startups. This slide covers an overview of what we do and the different segments that we kind of service. If you see the $143 billion number we have already mentioned, exports constitute a maximum share within the Indian IT industry, about $108 billion. The remaining is the domestic Indian market. Exports have kind of doubled in the last 6 years. And if you look at the IT industry, it's all IT services itself, that's about $75 billion. We are world number 1 in this space. If you look at engineering, research, and design, that's about $26 billion of revenue. We are world number 2 after China. If you look at BPO, that's about $28 billion again, and that's over there, again, we are world number 1. At the same time, we have a very fast-growing e-commerce industry, which is helping drive the domestic Indian IT market. That's growing at a 20-25% CAGR in the past few years. At the same time, we have 16,000 companies 16,000 IT companies in India. This is again second largest to China in terms of number of companies, and there is a lot of variety here. We've got domestic companies, large organizations, small organizations. They've got more than 1,000 MNCs and captives which are operating out of India. Some more breakups about what we do. These are some key service lines that we service. Infrastructure outsourcing has been our fastest growing segment. It has been growing at about 18 to 20% CAGR, and it has kind of trebled in terms of absolute value in the last 6 years. So it's a $12 billion industry today. Software testing, it's about a $5 billion industry today, growing at about 15% CAGR, and has almost grown by 2.5 times over 2009. Similar for cloud services, software as a service, the third segment. Engineering services has been growing very fast in the last 2 to 3 years, and it's doubled over 2011. And we do other services like application development, network consulting, system integration, those kind of stuff. So we talked about the growth of the industry, and what do people think about us? What do customers think about us? BCG conducted a survey of IT industry clients, and this is what they came up with, that 95% of the customers are satisfied with what they do out of India. 85% of the customers surveyed believe that India could deliver transformational value. And 95% of the customers again said that they plan to maintain or increase their footprint in India. If you look at these numbers, if you compare these CSAT scores with any other industries, there are very few industries which can match this level of customer support. What this has also led to what these high CSAT scores have actually led to is growth of the industry in India. And here are some customer quotes that we have kind of captured from different segments within the client base. And just note the keywords there: innovation, end-to-end solutions, joint planning, deep understanding. These are extremely progressive and customer-centric words. So and you look at the lay of the land. So for no assessment of Indian IT industry today is complete without talking about startups. So here is a short video clip that we have created around startups. Rajkumar. Okay, so if a picture can say 1,000 words, a video can say 1,000,000, right? So we created this video to celebrate Startup India, Stand Up India Prime Minister's event that happened way back in January. I want to move to the next segment. This is called the paradigm shift called digital. Every 5 years, NASSCOM and McKinsey come together to do some crystal ball gazing, if that was possible. But we try to come together and do some crystal ball gazing and try to take a long-term view of where the global technology industry is heading. And as a result, what is the play for Indian IT companies in that space? So last year we released this study amidst a lot of fanfare. And this study completely focused on what does this word digital mean and what is the impact on traditional IT services? Where is the IT industry heading? Before we even move to technology, if you just want to take a step back, there are 5 key factors which are actually impacting the world at a huge scale and pace. One is clearly the rise of emerging markets. Today, if you look at the Fortune 500, about 18% of them are headquartered in Asia. We believe that in the next 15 years, by 2030, more than half of Fortune 500 companies will be headquartered in Asia. At the same time, if you look at the global middle class, the size of the global middle class today, it's about 2.8 billion people. By 2030, in another 15 years, this number would be 5 billion people. So the number of middle class people will almost double. Most of this growth will again happen in Asia. So you can imagine where the consumer markets will shift. At the same time, aging of the global population, there are some interesting stats here also. What we believe is that by 2030, the number of people aged 65 and above will actually double. And the number of people who would be more than 80 years old would be 400 million. 400 million people would be more than 80 years old in the next 15 years. That's almost about 7% of the world's population. Just imagine, the opportunities for automation or healthcare systems for these kind of markets. Power of disruptive technologies, I think Andy and Mr. Mehta actually touched upon it. I will elaborate this further in my next few slides. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the integrating world. China sneezes, US catches a cold. Because of the effects of globalization, I think our economies have become very intertwined, and as a result, anything that happens in one part of the world affects other countries also, whether it is a war in the Middle East or something that Russia does to Chechnya. So the world is getting increasingly integrated. At the same time, a related topic is the return of geopolitics. Since the economic growth over the past few years hasn't been too great, you see the rise of these politicians who actually say that imposing barriers within one's own countries probably works to their greatest interests. Case in example, Brexit, or the rise of Donald Trump for that matter. So these 5 things, these 5 forces have a strong impact on technology per se. This is from the same study that Mr. Mehta was actually quoting, and we've done some additional work on that. These are a handful of technologies that McKinsey says can impact the world going forward. And McKinsey themselves say that this analysis is incomplete, and in all probability the impact would be much higher. But if you just add this handful of technologies, the impact that we see is almost 14 trillion to 33 trillion per year by 2025. To put things into perspective, China's GDP is about $10 trillion today. So we are looking at an impact of 1.5 to 3 times China's current GDP in the next 15 years due to these technologies coming into the system. A slightly muddled slide, but that was the purpose. It probably looks like a school of piranha attacking a big prey or something like that. But that's actually what is happening. So what we have shown here, what we have tried to show here is what all a bank does. So this is an unbundling of a bank slide. So if you look closely, there are headings like personal loans, small businesses, credit, everything that a bank does. There are multiple startups which are actually attacking those businesses today. Many of these startups will not survive, but some of them will. And what basically this slide says is that technology has reduced the barriers to entry. Anybody can be your competitor. The competitor can come from anywhere. So for example, if you look at a Citigroup, Citigroup's competitor would probably not be only a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America. It can also be a Paytm. right? A Paytm might not be doing everything that a bank does, but 10 different Paytms attacking different parts of the businesses will create a challenge. So, the more scary part is, when larger organizations start behaving like a smaller organization, start behaving like startups. There is this bank in Singapore, I don't know whether you know, called DBS. It's an established bank, but recently they just started their own digital banking system, which is only a digital account. There's no physical account that you need to create. The entire system is completely digital. And that's a startup concept, but that's a big company adopting a startup mindset to target main businesses. So this is something which will happen across industries. You'll see a lot of new competitors come in using technology as a differentiator. Just think about how Uber and Ola have disrupted the entire taxi market, and you get my point. We tried to define what is a digital enterprise. Till about last year, when we were doing our research, we never had a solo definition of what a digital enterprise means. Everybody used to talk about digital, this and that. So, we just tried to get our thoughts together, and we thought that a digital enterprise is one which is configured to deliver maximum strategic and operational value using current and emerging technologies and associated customer shifts to their advantage. Basically, an organization which is abreast with the latest developments in technology and use it to maximize their advantage, to maximize their competitive advantage. So that's a digital enterprise for me. This is probably the most important slide, I would think, in my presentation. I want to spend some more time around this. If you look at the graph on the left actually talks about where the world technology spend is moving to. If you look at 2014, almost 90% of technology spend that is happening is what we classify as traditional technologies. And only 10% of what the spend was happening is what we classify as digital technologies. In our definition of digital technologies, we include the following technologies: social, mobile, analytics, cloud, and cybersecurity. These 5 technologies constitute digital technologies for us. They only account for about 10% of current spend by corporates across the world. But what is going to change is that in the next 10 years, the overall IT spend is going to grow at an average level of 3 to 4%, which has always been the trend in the past decade also. But the composition of this spend is going to significantly change. The spend on traditional technologies is going to decline on an annual basis of about 5%, while the spend on digital technologies is going to grow on an annual basis of 25% every year. So just imagine something which is 90% of your business is going to decline to about 40% of business, while something which is only 10% of your business is going to grow to 60% of overall spend. So this is the kind of shift that we are talking of. And if you look at traditional technologies that we have already defined as application development, system integration, even products, even software products, licensed software products, even BPO for that matter, all of those markets are going to face a lot of decline. Just juxtapose these numbers to what is there on the right. The graph on the right actually talks to about how the Indian scenario is going to evolve. If you look at the current Indian IT, I've taken 2014 numbers of about $119 billion. If you look at that, almost 95% of what is happening in India is classified as traditional IT, while only 5% of what we do in India currently is classified as digital IT. This market is also going to change. However, the growth rates will be different. Indian IT industry will continue to grow in the traditional business. Why? Because of its intrinsic advantages of cost and talent. Traditional businesses will be very commoditized. At the same time, India's cost and talent advantages will remain. As a result, it won't be declining at 5%, it will actually be growing at 7%. At the same time, digital businesses will grow a lot faster. It will grow at about 39% CAGR over the next 10 years for India. And will account for almost 38% of revenues by 2025. This is what we project, and I think these numbers present a huge shift for Indian IT, a huge imperative for Indian IT to move away from the medium slow lane to the faster lane. How do you move away from your traditional way of work, the traditional services that you do, into the digital businesses that we have defined? The third section mostly deals on the innovation imperative, or how is innovation kind of changing. Another so when you look at, we talked about what is digital, we talked about growth of digital services. What does it all mean from a client perspective? What does it mean from a client perspective? What we see is that almost 75% of outsourcing contracts that are out there are being terminated before they're over, or are being renegotiated. Right? Almost 50% of business transformation projects that are being driven has a SaaS component. 80% of outsourcing contracts today has a cloud component. Right? All these numbers actually indicate that the clients are getting a lot smarter. You know, clients like Mr. Mehta, for example, if he's talking to an IT vendor, he'll obviously say, you know, the old SLAs will clearly not work. The old ways of working will clearly not work. This is how we want to do stuff recently. We talked about what is a digital enterprise. Clients want to become a digital enterprise, and they believe that their tech service providers, whether it's an internal captive tech service provider or an outsourced vendor, will help them become a digital enterprise. What does it mean from a service provider perspective is that it opens up innovation, it opens up co-creation, it opens up collaboration initiatives. We wanted to keep this slide in the deck just to talk about you know, how the drivers for outsourcing have typically changed. In the last decade, it was about cost and talent access. India always had plenty of that. But now what was desired earlier is now a given. Cost and talent access is already a given. You know, you cannot think of outsourcing or working in India without these factors. What has additionally emerged, or what are emerging as differentiators, how do I choose between a TCS or an Infosys or a Wipro, is clearly on their capability to innovate and their capability to offer domain knowledge. These are two new drivers that have emerged over a period of time over the last few years, and these are the differentiators for industry players. A similar thought is that, you know, there are 5 stages of moving up the value continuum framework. We've created a framework for value continuum. First, it was all about cost. Then it was all about doing it better, more efficiently. The third was about doing it differently, creating best practices. And the fourth was around creating business productivity, you know, defining business accountabilities. And the fifth period right now where we are here is around innovation. We believe there is a lot of play across multiple parameters for innovation. So 5 key, 5 key activities that an organization needs to do to become a futuristic player is: 1, build new service lines. We saw traditional service lines are not growing at the rate of growth, at the rate at which they were growing earlier. So how do you build new service lines and also defend your existing businesses? The innovation over here clearly will be to to select new technologies. How do you innovate? To create those select technologies, create right solutions, merging digital technologies and traditional services together, and innovations around, say, pricing. How do you change your pricing model to ensure that your existing customers do not leave, at the same time new customers come to the fore? The second is investing in the digital businesses. That's one thing that companies will need to do to grow in the next era. The innovation over here will be internal organization restructuring. How do you create a separate digital organization within your own business? And also, how do you invest? How do you get funds to create these new organizations? The third is that you should also understand that the clients that typically IT industry addresses, they would be 3 different types of clients. Some would say, I would prefer to remain traditional. Some would say, I would want to go 50-50 with digital and traditional. And some would say that I would want to be fully digital. So how do you create separate sales channels to address these 3 kinds of clients? Here there again will be innovation on designing those 3 different kind of sales channels. Reskilling talent, we believe that almost 30% of current workforce of 3.7 million people will be irrelevant in the next few years. 35% of current workforce will require serious amount of reskilling. Only 30% of current workforce will be relevant in the next 10 years. How do you innovate over here in creating those right talent pools and skilling and reskilling your current employees? And clearly, the final one would be, how do you build a collaboration and an M&A strategy? Companies have typically wanted to attack customers on their own. How do you change that? I would like to close with this slide which says, what we believe is how to become an innovative organization of the future. Clearly, one, you need to articulate a clear value proposition both internally and externally, and that value proposition for being an innovative organization has to tie in with the organization goals. Two is clearly build a talent strategy. How do you, how do you attract the innovative talent? Typically the Indian IT industry has pursued a factory kind of a model. How do you change that? How do you get the best of the best to work for you? The third area is around leadership and culture. You got to make leaders accountable and responsible for innovation. It cannot be a side business for all. The fourth is local innovation. Our innovation has always focused on what we can do for global businesses. How do we look at India? India has a lot of challenges. How do we look at India and try to create solutions for India which can be taken to emerging markets? The GECG machine is just a one-off example, but we are not doing enough to innovate for India. Open innovation. People want to share thoughts. People want to share ideas today. How do you use this propensity to share to drive your own innovation agenda? How do you work with startups? How do you set up accelerators? I think a lot of companies are doing that, but a lot of them are not doing that. And the last is clearly defining an innovation charter. Create a separate fund, create some dedicated people who will drive innovation. It's good to distribute innovation among certain people, but it cannot be the only way to drive innovation within the organization. You have to create people who are dedicatedly following that. So this is what I have, and thank you for hearing me out.